So the time has come for me to review Avatar The Last Airbender. I know what you're thinking, finally, because you guys have been on my case since the beginning of my channel for me to watch this, and I always thought, yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool, I'll check it out at some point. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, you know, I don't want to watch this. It looks like it's going to be for little kids. It's Nickelodeon, and all that I know about it is this silly little kid using magic tricks and stuff, and that's what I thought about it. I've never seen the show before, but it wasn't until Warp8, one of my viewers, decided to send it to me that I decided to actually sit down and give it a chance. And lately I've been going outside of anime and doing other stuff as well, even though I do consider this to be anime because it is animation. But I started watching Avatar, and I've got to tell you, I was blown away. And this is why I don't watch a lot of shows that are long-running, for two reasons. Either A, and when I say long-running, I mean longer than 24 episodes. So the two reasons are, one, it's going to take too long for me to get hooked into it, or two, if I do get hooked, there goes work, because I do YouTube and I do other stuff too, and that's exactly what happened with Avatar. From the very first few episodes, I decided, you know what? This is what I'm doing for the next few weeks, and I just blew through this anime, and I loved it so much. If there's anything that I could consider to be a total package, it's Avatar The Last Airbender. So the reason why I feel like this anime is such a total package, I'm going to explain over the entire span of this review. I'm not going to give it all away in just one sentence here. I want you to hear what I have to say about it, but this is a special thing about this review here, is that I've never seen the show before, so there's no nostalgia trip or anything like that. I'm a 33-year-old guy sitting down to watch a Nickelodeon cartoon for the very first time, and I came away just awestruck, and I really do love this. I enjoyed my adventure through Avatar The Last Airbender so much that as soon as I finished watching the show, I started back over again, and I got about one disc in before I realized, like, hey, I know where this is going. I'm about to spend a whole lot more time watching this, so let me just move on and watch Korra. There, I marathon that, and that review will be trailing this run in about a week from now. So just in case you've been stranded on a deserted island for the past 20 years, which I probably have been as well, because, I mean, I haven't seen it either, so don't feel bad, but Avatar The Last Airbender is set within this giant fantasy world where you've got people who are divided between 4 different countries, basically, or 4 different factions, and each of these factions take after a certain element. So you've got Earth, fire, air, and also water, and they all have their own distinct properties, such as the people of the water tribes. There's 2 different tribes. They live in the South Pole and also the North Pole. You've got the Earth Kingdom, and they live within these valleys and mountains, and they've got these giant walls built out of earth. You've got the Fire Nation, and much like fire, they spread, and their flames are spreading across the world as they try and conquer it all. And then you have the people of air. And as you can tell from the title of Avatar The Last Airbender, there's only one of them, and we can thank the Fire Nation for that. So the story begins showing the perspective of 2 characters from the southern water tribe, Katara and Sokka, as they sail about the Arctic seas, and they inadvertently uncover this giant orb of ice underwater that just so happens to contain the last airbender, Aang, who's a small young boy who is also the Avatar. So the Avatar is a character who has the ability to control all 4 elements. He's the only person in the world who's able to control all of these elements, and whenever the Avatar dies, he is reincarnated into another person's body. So there's always this never-ending chain of avatars there that are basically just seeking to create balance within the world between the human world and also the spirit world as well, because there's this multi-tiered level system to the world where there's spirits and there's humans, and once they were one and now they're divided. There is a lot of lore to the series right here, and that's in fact one of my favorite things about it. When I talk about this being a total package series, there really is a whole lot to sink your teeth into here. So after 100 years of slumber, the Avatar is released from his sphere of ice, and it releases this massive amount of power, this energy beam that comes up from it right into the sky, and this is actually what kicks the story into motion, because the Fire Nation, they're out patrolling looking for the Avatar, because there's one person from the Fire Nation, Prince Zuko, who was exiled from his kingdom, and the only way that he can win honor back and get to rejoin his kingdom is to find and capture the Avatar. I'm not gonna lie, while I was watching Avatar, I felt like the first episode was always the weakest point of the series, because it just came off as being so contrived for me. I was watching it, and it just felt like, yes, this is definitely a kid's show, something from Nickelodeon, especially, you know, it's the first episode, it's my first impression, where you've got these kids who are just out and about, and then they randomly uncover this character who has got the ultimate power. He's the Avatar, but it wasn't until later on, much to my delight, that I see that there's a flashback that actually goes and fully fleshes out all of that stuff, everything that happens before episode 1, and I was really pleased with that. And then at that point, somewhere in season 3, when we get to see this, I thought, you know what, that actually does make a lot of sense the way that they explain it. Now, there's one other thing I thought I'd have a big problem with when watching Avatar, which is the fact that there even is an Avatar, that there's one character who has control over all 4 elements, and he's the main character, and then everybody else in the series, if they can control anything, it's only going to be that one element. And I kind of made that connection to anime, because we see this in anime all the time, like Goku or Ichigo in Bleach. I mean, Ichigo is basically a power sponge, and there's not a single character in the series that has a certain type of power that Ichigo can't have, just a little bit of that power in him, and it's just, it kind of gets tiring seeing that, because you know that your protagonist has such a large arsenal, such a large tool bag in order to come into every single problem that he has and just come away so overpowered that nobody really stands a chance to him. But that's not the case with an Avatar, and I really like how they executed this, because even though you have Aang, who has control over all 4 elements, that means he just has the potential to control all 4 elements. And what we see a lot within the entire series is not him just going around blowing people away or just being totally unstoppable as this invincible force. It's not like that. He's actually traveling across the world on this adventure, not only to stop the Fire Nation, but also to learn the abilities that he's supposed to learn as the Avatar, because in the beginning of the series, he has basically mastered airbending, but he's just dabbled in a bit of waterbending. So he's got to find a water master, he's got to find an earth master, and he's also got to find a fire master as well to teach him how to use these elements, and he's not very good. It takes him a while to actually train and learn these abilities, and that's actually one of the things that I really liked about this. And I even was taken back to the days that I used to watch Naruto, and I really enjoyed how Naruto would have to struggle with everything that he needed to learn at certain parts and just train endless hours in order to master, like the Rasengan, for example. That same feeling that I had watching Naruto, I felt the same way about watching Aang over here trying to earthbend for the very first time. There's another aspect of the elemental system here that I felt was implemented brilliantly and beautifully here, which is, maybe you come into the story and you think, oh, 4 elements, this is going to get predictable real quick because people can only use 1 element at a time, with the exception of Avatar Aang. But the truth is, everybody has different levels of mastery. You've got people like with Katara, for example, who's just a beginner waterbender, and she's actually learning alongside Aang as the story progresses. Plus, of course, she's also learning with the battles that come about. But at the same time, there are characters in the series who have reached such a level of mastery that they hone their craft to the extent that they revolutionize bending as a whole. And you'll see over time that, like, say for example, this person from this place over here, they revolutionize bending in this way, and then they teach it to other people, and then several, maybe a season later, there's more people that learn that type of bending from this person, but yet it still comes from the same element. I'm not trying to give you any specifics here, because that is a massive spoiler right there, and some people talk about it like it's not a big deal, but I feel like, looking back earlier in the series, there were times when I thought, well, why don't they just use their power to bend this way? And the truth is, they didn't know how to do that yet, and they actually do uncover things like that in the future. So while we're on the topic of the magic system, let's talk about these fights, because wow, this is an area that I feel like they really did go above and beyond. And because, like, first of all, you've got the magic system here, so it's not just characters who are throwing magic back and forth at each other, water or fire or whatnot. There's also martial arts involved here, and the martial arts that they use are actually taken from real life martial arts. Most of it, from what I can see, is like Kung Fu. You can actually see a special on the DVD here where they actually do compare side-by-side comparisons of the martial arts that they use in the anime and then also the real life martial arts of people doing it. So it's this beautiful mixture of people having superpowers plus real martial arts, and I really did love that. But these fights, they have such a massive scale, because you'll have, like, in the beginning, or pretty much all times throughout the series, you could have where it's like one person fighting another person out in the middle of nowhere, but at the same time, you could also have these fights where it's these giant wars, where you've got these tanks that are attacking the city, or you've got these giant battleships that are just shooting fireballs and just trying to destroy everything that they can, and you've got this city that is just falling to ruin and chaos ensues everywhere. But there's all of these small little one-on-one fights that are going on everywhere, where we've got our team who basically split up and they're fighting people individually, including the people that they come in contact with and make friends with, and they're kind of fighting side by side. They really did a great job with these fights. Now, there's one other thing about the fights that I need to mention, because it may sound a bit contradictory, because if you know about the show, or if you've just seen any pictures, then you know about the Avatar state. This is the state where his eyes glow, the arrows on his body and everything, they start glowing, and he just starts going crazy at this point. So, the Avatar state, what I can say without giving spoilers is this state where he gets in touch with his spiritual connection between all of the previous avatars, and he's in touch with all of their power, and his energy is just going straight through the roof here, but he doesn't really use that on a whim to just blow people away. The only times that he really uses this are when he can't control it, or when there's an enemy there that requires him to just take it to that next level. So the thing about this is that it's not only this positive, let me just go Super Saiyan and become stronger like that. There's actually a lot of negatives included with this Avatar state that give Aang reason to not want to use that ability. But when he did go into Avatar state, I'll say this, I was taken back to the days when I was watching Naruto, when Naruto first went into QB mode and he was destroying everything. Remember that giant crater that he left on the ground? The thing about the fights in Avatar is the more you watch, the more you enjoy them, because each of the characters, they go through training, they go through combat, where they learn through their combat experience, and the more you watch, the better they get, therefore the stronger enemies they fight, and the more fun you have in watching them, especially with Aang, because he will learn more about the different elements that he has control over, and he will start using them all together at once when he fights, and it is just a thrill ride. And there's even characters in the show that are fun to watch them fight, and they have no bending abilities, like Sokka. He is not a waterbender, even though he's from the water tribe, so he has to find a way to defend himself and to protect the people that are in his party and become a useful character to the team, despite the fact that he has no ability to do waterbending. So let's move on and talk about these characters. If you know me, then you'll know that I am a stickler for well-written characters, and Avatar really did impress here. And I feel like there's only one character that I didn't really like, and that was Zuko's sister, just because I felt like she had a little bit too much screen time for her to be as flat of a character as she was. So, you know, that's one character who's a very minor character in the overall grand scheme of things, and everybody else, the heroes, the villains, that they had a lot of screen time, then I really did love them, and I love the progression and the development that all of the characters have, because you have every single character in the story that starts off one way, and they just grow with the story, and the events that they experience in the time span of the story here change their character in one way or another. So just to make an example of how great of a story Avatar The Last Airbender is, let's take a look at Sokka, because Sokka is the clown of the group. And when you think about clowns of the group, they're throwaway characters, basically. They're the ones that sit there in the background and they make a bunch of jokes, and they're really get no development whatsoever. But Sokka actually got a lot of development. He was also faced with a lot of hardships as well. Like, if you were to compare Sokka to any of the other joke characters in a lot of anime, of course there's characters like Kuwabara, which really did go above and beyond and have great character development within Yu Yu Hakusho. But like, if you look at pretty much 80% of modern anime that have come out within the past 10 years, and you look at these characters that are primarily there to make a joke and to make you laugh, they don't get development. Maybe they go halfway through the story and their character takes a 180 turn out of nowhere, but Sokka actually, I mean, he's a funny guy, but at the same time, he also goes through a lot of hardships, because they're out there by themselves. They've got the Fire Nation chasing them. They've got pretty much other nations trying to turn them in, because they know that there's a reward out there for the Avatar within the Fire Nation. But you've got Sokka, who he can't bend whatsoever. He's got a boomerang, and he's got to use that boomerang and his wits in battle, even though he's not really that experienced, because these are just a couple of bumpkins from the Southern Water Tribe, and he's got to find ways to defeat his enemies, to protect his friends, and also save his own life as well. And it can really get difficult for him in the heat of battle. Plus, on top of that, there are numerous times within the series that they have these strong romantic moments between numerous characters within the story. It's not just relating to Sokka, but there was this one time in particular that there was this really sad episode about him and this love interest of his. I'm not going to get into detail with that, but I guarantee you everybody that watches that episode is really going to get pulled on the heartstrings by watching that episode there. It was a really great episode, but it's not just like there's a few good episodes with Sokka peppered in there. He's great throughout the entire series, and his personality evolves, and he never stops being this funny person, but he starts to take more and more responsibility, even up into the end, where he starts like training more in combat, and he really is a character that is a very round character, and that's really what I appreciate about him. But it's not just Sokka that's like this, it's every character in the entire series, but you really put him under the spotlight because he is the joke character of the show. So if the joke character is written like this, then you know everybody else is getting that same spotlight. They're getting that same attention to detail with the writing. Like, say for example, Prince Zuko is considered to be like the main villain of the show, but his uncle Iroh, he's one of my favorite characters of the show. I would actually say that he is my favorite character of the show. So it's just the uncle of the villain of the show here, and he is somebody that he kind of tries to balance out Zuko in ways. So he's really this peaceful type of guy. He's part of the Fire Nation, but he's not exactly this war-mongering person at the point that we see him in the story. He just likes to sit around and drink tea, and he's very level-headed and cool-minded, and I really enjoyed watching him. He was my favorite character of the show, but it's like every single character that gets a fair amount of screen time gets this great amount of development within their story, and all of these characters, for the most part, they have these backstories where you get to go back and learn more about their past, and it's not like where sometimes it is like this, where you get like one episode where it shows their backstory, but a lot of the things that we learn, like say for example, the history of Iroh, we learn through other characters talking to each other about stuff, and you pick up little bits about these characters' backstories, and I felt like they did a great job with that. So speaking of Sokka, who's this clown-like character, there's actually a lot of comedy in Avatar, and I've said this a lot with an anime and how, this is a really serious show, they're using comedy at the wrong moments. Like say for example, in my review of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, when I said things like, there was a character in Full Metal Alchemist, not to give cross-series spoilers or anything, but there's a character in that series who sacrificed some of her organs so that she can try to bring her child back to life, and because she sacrificed those organs, she will start coughing up blood. In Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, they made jokes about that, where she starts coughing up blood, and they take their head transforms into the whole chibi thing that they do, and characters are flipping out, and they have the squiggly lines and everything in the background. It's supposed to be a funny thing. I don't think that's funny. You shouldn't be making fun. You shouldn't be making jokes about characters who sacrifice organs to bring somebody back to life, and now they're spewing up blood and they're in immense pain. That's not funny. So when I talk about the humor not fitting the tone of the story, that's what I talk about here. Some of the humor in Full Metal Alchemist, it worked out very well, but there's things like that I criticize in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. But with Avatar The Last Airbender, I don't think I've ever really seen somebody mix comedy and action and seriousness and drama and suspense all that well within the series. But in Avatar, it's strange to say this, but they have even more comedy than Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and some people also do criticize the show for that and just having too much comedy in general, which I can understand that, but I feel like Avatar has even more comedy than that, and it blends in much better, I feel. Maybe it's because the character of Aang, he's this carefree child. Well, of course he's not carefree, but he's got the mannerisms of somebody that's totally carefree, and of course you've got Sokka, who's always cracking the jokes and everything. There's this one time that I always think about where Aang, he was really showing off his airbending powers, and he had these beads that he was spinning around. He was trying to show off to Katara because he had a crush on her, and he was trying to use his airbending abilities to impress her, so he was spinning these beads around in his hand like this, and she was totally unimpressed. She didn't even look at it. And then as soon as they landed, they went into this town, and he started doing it to impress the people there, and they were really impressed by it. I thought that was kind of a funny contrast, but then they took it a step up, and they did this.
Check this out.
There's no explanation for it. You got people who are like foaming at the mouth and pass out. But the thing that I love so much about the humor of Avatar The Last Airbender is that they will implement small little bits of humor like that, and they will carry it on later. Like that joke right there about the person passing out with the foam in their mouth, they still do that in Legend of Korra. Not that exact thing, like they do it to the point where they play it out, but like there'll be a picture of somebody there, and they'll be foaming at the mouth next to the Avatar, and he's like spinning the things around. So they'll establish a joke at one point, and they will just casually bring it up at points later on, to the extent like it never gets stale, but it's something that's always like, hey, you know, that's actually pretty funny. You know, it makes you remember the joke, so you kind of laugh again. So I think they did a really good job of mixing the different elements of feeling dramatic, you know, feeling the suspense and the intense of the war that's going on, and some of the characters that are coming close to death. And then you've also got the comedy and the romance element. This anime, it really does go in all the different directions, and I feel like it hits each of these notes very well. So let's move on and talk a bit about lore and world building, because this is another one of my favorite aspects of the show. There are so many things in the show that I felt like they did a really good job in, but when it comes to lore and world building, you will get these characters, they start off in the South Pole, and they travel all across the world. It's a long series, 3 seasons long, so there's a lot of times where they go to different parts of the world, and each part of the world has their own culture, it has their own legends, and it has their own history, basically, and you get to go back and learn about some of the history, and the things that these characters do even branch over to Legend of Korra, and there's basically this continual level of advancement, and that's one of the things that I love so much about the show. In fact, that was my favorite thing about Legend of Korra, was that it progressed the lore, it progressed the world building, and we got to see more of how these characters and how the world itself advanced. So just to give you a few brief examples without spoiling things, we've got Aang, who is spiritually connected to all of the other avatars, and he can go back and experience some of the memories that they have, and that connects to some of the relatives of some of the other characters in the story, and that actually goes further back into their backstory. But then you also have times where, like say for example, when Aang is going to try and find one of the air temples, because the air people, they are like nomads, and I also felt that it was really interesting to see how each of the different kingdoms interact with each other, because the Fire Nation, they're like fire and they're spreading throughout the world, conquering. The Earth Nation, they're like a giant rock and they protect their nation with big walls, and they don't really go without the walls. The Water people, they're tribal and they live in the water, you know, the North and South Pole and whatnot. So I really enjoyed that, but they were going to look for this air temple, and they get in there and they realize that it has been sacked and basically destroyed by the Fire Nation before then, but the people that were living there now are kind of like engineers, and they're making all of these little trinkets and stuff. And there's this one guy there who was making special things for the Fire Nation, and you can actually see his inventions over time grow and grow, and it's kind of like just this one point in the series spread, and you can actually see progressions built upon some of the things that he made probably all the way up in Legend of Korra, and that's just one person right there. Every character in the series has some sort of impact like that, and every nation has its own history, like I said, and their own culture, and it's really interesting because they actually take inspiration from real-life culture, and how you have the Southern Water Tribe is basically like Eskimos, and the Fire Nation was inspired from Japan, and it felt like the Earth Nation was inspired from China. So it was really interesting in seeing all of these different cultures and all the different history, because it's, even though it's like slightly inspired by things that exist within the real world, it's totally different in this giant, just expansive fantasy world. And the entire series of Avatar is based on the comic book, and this really does make me want to read it, because I wanted to learn more about the lore. And the whole time I'm watching the show, I'm just thinking to myself, why hasn't there been an Avatar MMORPG? I thought that would be a great idea. Maybe I'll make a video about that at some point, my idea for the Avatar MMO, because that would be a great game. I'd love to play that right there. But this is just such a wonderful series, and when I say this is a total package, this is something that I feel like this would stack up with Shonen Battle series, because Shonen Battle series, they've got a little bit of, they kind of hint at romance, but they don't really go anywhere. Avatar goes further than that. When they get into the action here, there's characters that just get these crazy power-ups out of nowhere. Avatar, you have characters that train over time, and they go for a long period of time, just gradually progressing, putting their life on the lines, basically. And then, of course, you've got the dramatic elements of the wars that's going on. Of course, Avatar nails that. It's got character development just out the wazoo here. It's just really great. First time I've ever said wazoo here, probably in my life, not only just on camera here, but yeah, they do a good job pretty much with everything here. And I feel like, even, let's talk about consistency here, because a lot of people could probably compare this to maybe One Piece, Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, or whatever, because it's got a lot of the same elements: comedy, action, adventure, alright? So just comparing this to any other anime shonen series, just on the level of consistency alone. In Avatar, there's a start, there's a finish. It is a complete story, and there are a few episodes that feel like they don't exactly progress the plot, but they're done in such a well-created way that I don't think there's a single episode that I didn't enjoy here. Like, say, for example, with this, there was an episode where they did a recap episode in Season 3. That was probably the best recap episode I've ever seen, because what they did was they had all of our characters, all of our heroes, sitting there in the theater watching this play that is told from the perspective of, I think, the Fire Nation, and everything is all like propaganda, basically, that is supposed to prop up the Fire Nation to all of its subjects, but you would have the characters sitting there watching that, and they would say, hey, it didn't go like this, and they kind of remember how it would go briefly while they're interacting with each other, and they would see this terrible portrayal of the story and the events that actually happened on stage. So it was this really fun story, and I normally just skip these recap episodes, but they did such a good job of it, and it's just like they do everything well. So just in the sheer consistency alone, Avatar has got a beginning and it's got an end. Every single episode contributes to the plot, with the exception of a few episodes that are peppered in here and there, and those episodes were still a lot of fun to watch. And even though they didn't directly relate to the overall plot that's going on with the War of the Fire Nation, they still advanced our characters, and they still advanced the skills of our characters, and they advanced the world building here. And that's something like a lot of these shows, the shonen action series, they'll either have a bad ending, no ending, it'll just go on forever until it gets canceled, or the beginning is not very good and it takes a while to get to the good part, or it'll have filler episodes. Like, you'll have a point where you'll get to like 12 episodes of filler in a row. Avatar is a very solid, I feel it is a total package, and there's not very many total packages that I can talk about with an anime, and I definitely do recommend Avatar The Last Airbender. If you think you're too old for it, if you don't think you'd like it because it looks like it's kiddie, or if you don't want to watch anything that is not Japanese animation, you really do need to give this a try, or whatever reason you have to have not seen Avatar The Last Airbender yet, it's just an excuse. You gotta go check this out, and maybe the first season, maybe you won't get really stuck into the show by the first season, because I felt like I truly got hooked in the second season. I enjoyed season 1, but season 2, where it really solidified the fact that I love this show. So definitely go out and check out Avatar The Last Airbender. So let me know your thoughts about Avatar The Last Airbender in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to let me know by hitting that like button, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Stay classy, everybody. I'd also like to give a special thanks to everyone who supports my channel on Patreon, because seriously, without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do these videos, because this is how I pay my bills. YouTube ads are nothing, so thanks to everybody who supports, because you really do make these videos possible. A special thanks to a few supporters who have gone above and beyond in their support of the channel. I'd like to say thanks to Marcus, Brady the Undefeated Magician, Naya Chan, Warpbait, Ben Johnson, and Light Lelouch. Thank you so much, everybody. If you'd like to help support the channel, check out the Patreon, because there's lots of bonuses there, such as joining our Patreon Discord group. For only $5 a month, we watch anime there 4 times a week in the mornings, and we also have a live chat on Fridays or Saturdays for a few hours. It is a lot of fun getting to talk to you all there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Later.